Trollord Games. Join the fray.
We good? We live? So I'll quit reading the news. How did your voiceover sound? Was it good? Chuck, I'm talking to you. Nobody can hear you. You got your mic muted. Or something's muted. All right, everybody. We're here for GM's Tricks of the Trade. What are we on? 71? Railroading. Yes, 71. I completely lost track of where we are on this mess. But regardless, we're here on December 3rd, 2020 for another GM's Tricks of the Trade. Let's put another one. That was Chuck's voiceover. Yes, Great Babe. He was very, he worked on that all day. So he's very excited about it. Join the fray. Yep, he's got a great voice for that stuff. Davies probably could do it if you could nail him to a chair and a microphone long enough, but he's not like to do that. He's out in the woods building a cabin at the moment. There you go. Lord Dalius, Commander, Willie, Epi and Grape, thanks for joining us. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to wander in. I'm going to try not to get sidetracked this time so that we can get out of here a little earlier today than our usual 10 after 5. That is the plan. We've got... Hey, Derek, how's it going, man? I've got a backlog of caravans. I'm trying to do one caravan a day for the NPC Almanac, and I've got a backlog now because I didn't release one yesterday. I had it on hand. I got one today, didn't release it, and I got one for tomorrow, and it probably will go out in the morning, maybe tonight. We'll see. But we should get that hammered down. Next week, we should get it all wrapped up. Wow, that sounded really good, Grape Ape says. Thought you guys had hired Jason or someone. Look at that. You see? Yeah, Commander Pete. They never quite work out. Yep, first contact with the enemy. But you keep laying them, right? You keep putting the plans together so that hopefully at least you have some way to react to whatever's coming down the pipe. But yeah, thanks for the subscription, Geek Preacher. Very much appreciated. Looks like we're not going to get to see you again this year at GaryCon. It's shut down. Or it's going virtual, I should say. It's not shut down, but it will not be in the great state of Wisconsin up there in Lake Geneva. It will be on the airwaves. I get one free subscription a month, so why not? There you go. Hey, Steve, I won't be mad if you ship out my copy of Gaxmore before everyone else. I'll see what I can do, Abby. So, yeah, those things got loaded, as it turns out, but I don't think they have left the shipping freight. They left the loading dock and went to the shipping freight, the freight company. So it's there's something about COVID up there hitting the shipper or something. So things are a little bit slow. And I heard something about UPS putting limits on shipments here pretty soon because it's just gone through the roof. Everybody ordering. I think Black Friday sales were down like 24%. If the malls weren't dying, they're going to die soon. Are you kidding me? Holy Christmas. Yeah, they've been kind of slipping. And, you know, I've said this before, that this pandemic is something of an accelerant. It tends to things that were going in a direction, it's accelerated that tendency, and malls were already on the way out. I think it's really being replaced by not so much strip malls, but those kind of outdoor, I don't know, things that have parks. Exactly, really, we're just it's just flipping all the way back, and it does it all the time. Everything's cyclic. They think it's new. It's not new, and that's why the old timers are like, I've lived this 4 times, so it's nothing new. That's why you see very few old people that are scared of this pandemic, and they're the most susceptible. They're like, and half of them are 80 and I'm probably ready to go anyways. My mother's that way. She said, well, if I get it, Daddy will just welcome me home. So that was her whole response to, to the pandemic. So who knows? Do what? It is. I mean, and it's just one of those things. She's lived through at least 3 of these things in the past, so it becomes. Of course, now she will light into people who are against the vaccine because she'll tear into you about polio. She had friends who had polio and grew up without, they didn't have a vaccine, so it was. And she said it was the worst thing you could see, and iron lungs and all that mess, of which we don't have any memory because we're too young, too green behind the ears. Is that what they say? So really, what retro is telling us is that the retail sales are down, but not overall sales, which is good. Um, Good for companies like Trollord Games and other smaller companies. We did a huge amount of business over the weekend, so it was good. But it will change things. Joe Goodman sent me an email yesterday, and he's just started reading Ready Player One. Oh no, Ready Player Two. I guess the fall. I haven't read the first one. He's reading the second one, and he said the author in there has this kind of track about, and I think he's dead on that we're only meant to be in small groups, small bands, and tribes, and what have you. So to have 1 million or 7 billion people on social media interacting, it's a complete nightmare. And so he kind of cracks a joke about it. It looks kind of interesting, but I think there's probably some truth to that. So maybe us staying in our little groups and ordering shit will be all right. Because if social media would just stop, especially Facebook and Twitter would just stop. But it really, I was telling, I think I've cracked a joke on here before, how I long for the days on Facebook where people just took pictures of their food and posted. Exactly. We made fun of them then. Now we're like, oh, the good old days. There you go, Big Dan. You just stay home and paint miniatures. Who are you talking to? I've got old people mad at me right now that tell me I don't want to get it. I still get kids at home, and I'm high risk. Yeah, so it's going to be a mixed bag. I think all of the older people in my family they're not indifferent to it, but they're old, and I don't know. The younger people seem to be a little more concerned than the older people. I hate pictures of food. When I was doing doctoral work, one of my professors told me that the human brain can only process 125 to 150 personal connections. Well, Tim used to have a philosophy. Tim, you'll have to correct me where I'm wrong, but Tim would say I can only have so many friends. I think the number was like 7 or 8 or something. So if he made a new friend, he had to ditch another one, an old one. Somehow I've made it the cut all these years. I don't know. Dunbar's number, humans are meant for groups of between 100 and 250. It makes sense. I mean, we are a very band-oriented primate. That's what we are. How's the weather down the street? It's over to Retro. Welcome, everyone. And I've been on Facebook for 12 years. I can remember when this was all just farmland. Was that little game that everyone was playing? It took farmland. It took Facebook by storm. It's one of those little bitty people game where you do whatever the hell. And interestingly, I hired a guy to create a Castles and Crusades game built along that kind of line. Paid him a good chunk of money, and he gave me, I've got it around here somewhere, he's got kind of a start how you played and everything, and then he disappeared. And never got my money back. But this is the fate of Trollord on the internet. You win some, you lose some. All right, so let's, it was 5 at that time, but I've amended to a few times. It's now over 7. So that's how I've made the cut. Tim has increased it by by a couple. Keeps life simple, though. Keeps life simple. That's all right. All right, so let's dive into. The Geek Preacher. I've been telling people for years that churches don't need to have more than 125 to 200 people. Small bands are the best, and use that theory in my gaming. Yep, there you go. It's just a good thing. I mean, you get a nice little community going. One of the things my wife enjoys watching these really, really campy Christmas movies, and they all take place in very small towns and whatnot. And she just enjoys it. And you know, when you watch them, you're like, yeah, maybe we should be living in small towns. Yeah, yeah. I sat down and watched a couple of them with her, but it was kind of interesting. Yeah, Tim's way out in a small town, a town of two. He and his wife. So he might right. He might disagree with that assessment. All right. So let's dive into whatever we're doing. I forgot what we're doing. GM's tricks of the trade, and we're doing railroading. So railroading is that. For those of you who don't know, railroading is essentially where the GM is running a game and kind of forces the characters, the players, down a certain path where they don't have much options, they don't have many choices to take. And it sometimes can be extraordinarily onerous to characters, to players, and create some friction at the table, if not some long lasting, animosity. I've got do I? Oh, yeah, the puppet master. There you go. Oh, what's it say? I'm not saying the DM is railroading us. I'm just pointing out that this tower is the only structure we've seen in 3 sessions. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. But it can railroading can lead to some long lasting animosity. I've had players, um, and not necessarily in my game that I know of, but their characters were kind of railroaded into doing certain things and made to act a certain way, or even kind of portrayed a certain way by the dungeon master, castle keeper, that the player never wanted to play in that fella's game again. So I mean, and years later we'll still hear about it. It'll crop up. So railroading can have a pretty serious consequence on your game. So you want to, if you do it, and there's a place for it, but if you do it, you want to kind of couch it a little bit and not force it too much. At the end of the day, these players, I gotta close that craziness. At the end of the day, these players have created a character and they want that character to be theirs, and they don't want it to be, like a video game or whatever. They want to have choice. They want to have agency. I've come to absolutely love that word. They want to have agency in whatever it is that they're doing, whatever adventure they're going on, and taking that away can be problematic. Games at a convention can be railroaded to agree, but in regular gaming groups, I don't do it. Yeah, convention games are a little bit different, but even there, you got to be careful railroading too much, because then it just becomes, well, and we'll get into this, it becomes this kind of story time thing where you're just telling people what's happening and they're rolling dice occasionally to make a check or what have you. So railroading is, there's times you want to do it when you absolutely have to have the players doing something, but as with all things, what do the old timers say? All things in moderation. If you're going to use it rarely. That way, when you do use it, it's not something that leaves a lasting, footprint in the middle of your game. How much is it to hire Chuck to voice over my next Kickstarter? There you go, Chuck. You've got a new career waiting for you. It really is, and you're going to end up in some arguments. There's almost no. You're going to end up in some arguments. Um, did we break Steve in the first? I just logged on, and the first thing I hear is Chuck is going to do voiceover. There you go. Can people hear me? They said, "Did we break Steve?" And I'm not sure what they're referring to, but I assume that someone talking we can't. Oh, that's Chuck talking. Yes. All right. Yeah. Can you not hear Chuck? Is nobody hearing Chuck? Oh yeah, they only hear they only hear me, Chuck. Well, there you go. Yeah, it is okay. All right. Well, so Chuck was talking about railroading, and it's essentially saying that if you kind of predetermine what the character is going to do in your head, once the game actually starts, you're in for a lot of trouble, and
What the problem is.
you're going to end up with arguments pretty soon. But let's dive into the first one, character control. So this one is probably for me the worst type of railroading there is. Period. Players put an awful lot of, not all, but most players put a whole lot of energy, effort, and design into their characters. They imagine them a certain way. They want them to behave a certain way. They want them to look a certain way. And if the game master jumps in there and starts mucking around with any of that, it can really leave a bad impression. And a perfect example of that, I had a fighter. I was playing in a guy's game, and we got defeated. We were driven off the battlefield or some such. I honestly can't remember what happened, but it was we were pretty, it was a sound thrashing, as they say. But as we fell away, the dungeon master described my warrior as weeping uncontrollably in fear, and I was like, I'm not doing that. Nobody's weeping uncontrollably. That's not the way I quit the battlefield. And it was an interesting. I didn't argue with him. I try not to argue with game masters when they're doing their thing, because it's hard enough. But in my head, the fighters, the warrior's whole, the way I envisioned him was kind of wrecked because now he's just whatever. So it's one of those things, and you don't really want to do that. You don't want to take over their character at any point, even under things like a fear spell. You don't want to describe. Say you've done a fear spell on the party, they fail and they're running. You don't want to describe them as running in terror and breaking down, and you're driven off by uncertainty. You have this overwhelming feeling to quit the battlefield. Something horrific is going to happen. You're under the spell of a fear spell, the onus of a fear spell or what have you. So it's better to not do anything that's going to allow you to control their character, even in the smallest fashion. And the only time, and I even rarely do this, if there's some kind of mind control spell or magic item that someone else is controlling that character, even then. I'll pull the character aside and say, hey, listen, you're under a Geese spell, and this Geese is making you do this, so I need you to play like this. And then let them do their own character. And 9 out of 10 times, the player's going to really get into it because it's something different and, changes it. So the absolute worst you can do, in my opinion, on railroading is character control. Just don't do it. Just avoid it at all possible. Always, just avoid it. Never mess with a player's personality. That's horrible. Yes, absolutely, Geek Preacher. I would ask them, how do you react to this? Do you weep uncontrollably or something else? Yeah, that's different. That's the proper way to do it. You don't want to put, because they might want to play that Conan-esque. They might want to play someone who breaks down, uncontrollably. But they might want to play a Conan character who, the warlord, whoever, that isn't going to weep when they're defeated all the time. They don't weep or what have you. And then there's a heroic side to weeping, a romantic side to weeping or crying that you can play into your character, but you want the player to do that. You don't ever want to take that away from the player, because really, in the big picture, it's not really going to affect anything. They're crying, who cares? There's no mechanics for crying. However, you've altered the way they perceive their character, and that can have long-term complications. And if they don't want to role play, then I'm good with that. I would, I don't force them to role play it. Never force them to role play. Some people just don't like role play, and that's perfectly fine. I could see you possibly role playing a character who's missing from the session, but if you know something is going to happen ahead of time, you ask them before the game happens. Yeah, Makara, we've talked about that before. Taking over players' characters. If you absolutely have to, you do that. Yeah, absolutely, and you're right. You got. And in this day and age, you can maybe even get them on FaceTime or text messaging and shoot them some text to try to get their responses from them. But role playing someone else's character, especially in the context if they're sitting at the table, is just not going. It's just not good. Hello, Blazing Eyes. How's it going, man? Conan only weeps when he doesn't have any more enemies to slay. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you look at your classic heroes, and Tarzan for me, and Conan, of course, and the Warlord from the Warlord comic books, whoever, Captain America, it doesn't matter. They're not prone. Well, I've been watching a lot of The Punisher lately with John, is it Blumenthal, whatever his name is, the Netflix series, and he gets the living crap beat out of him constantly, and he's never crying. So that's kind of how, yeah, Kroll knows. Kroll. I've been seeing that pop up here on the internet. I must have said something somewhere because crap on the Warlord showed up. Mike Grell's Warlord was a fantastic character. Yeah, John Carter, perfect example. Absolutely perfect example. I've never made my player respond in any specific way. They respond however they wish to react, and that night is the way to do it. Let them play their character. Don't take their agency. It's just not cool. You certainly wouldn't want them, and we'll talk about this at the end. You certainly don't want them, throwing hatted DMs behind the screen, and you shouldn't be doing it to their characters either. If he wept, it would be in a manly fashion. Exactly. If they're going to weep, it's going to have some kind of. And there was a romantic side to that. I mean, if you read Tolkien, there's a great. Like I literally just finished The Hobbit yesterday, and at the end of it, Bilbo weeps uncontrollably at the death of Thorin and Fili and Kili. But it's not a childlike simpering, weeping craziness that they crawl under the crib or whatever. It's kind of a romanticized expression of grief, and that type of stuff that's cool. But in the context of the game, yeah. But damn it, I ruined The Hobbit for everybody. Damn it. Yeah. Hope to God everybody surely has read The Hobbit by now. Knowing my luck, there'll be one poor bastard who's been waiting all these years to read that book. I can't decide if I'm going to jump into. I set my Spartan history book aside, and I can't decide if I'm going to jump into The Lord of the Rings. I think you're past the statute of limitations on The Hobbit. Hopefully, I can't even remember the movie. Does Fili and Kili and Thorin die? Honestly, can't remember. That movie and me didn't agree so much. But I can't remember. Anyways. All right. So next panel, trick of the trade number 2, forced direction. So this is what most people are referencing when they're talking about railroading, and what they're essentially talking about is forcing the party to go in a different or in a very specific direction. I like the Hobbit movie as a movie, but not as a retelling of the Hobbit. I didn't bother watching the Hobbit film. I shouldn't have bothered with the second. Yeah, I watched all. I think there's 3 of them. There might be 4. I'm not sure how many there are. I watched them all. I didn't watch some of the extended stuff on YouTube. I'm not going to comment. I don't like to comment negatively on movies, and I guess that's a comment in and of itself. But I preferred the cartoon version to the to the other one, to the more modern one. Are you clicking at me for a reason? What are you doing? I didn't buy it. They died with Fili and was reborn as Poldark. I don't even know who Poldark is, but I'm afraid to ask. Yeah, the Hobbit cartoon actually captured the mood of the book itself, I thought. And I actually enjoyed the animated Lord of the Rings. Return of the King was cool, but the Lord of the Rings, I really enjoyed that Ralph Bakshi style where they did the overlays, or I'm not sure what they did. I just enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. You can see bits and pieces of other movies like El Cid in there. It's just cool. I thought it was a really cool way to do it. I don't like anything that's a little bit different.
I was reading what Decimus said about the second Hobbit movie.
Oh, yeah. But, part of my issue with The Hobbit, overall, they're decent films, but they took it, and Hollywood does this far too often with fantasy stuff. It's very frustrating. They take it into this comedic thing, and I remember where I was fine with it until they're leaving the Elf King's kingdom, and they're in the barrels, and they're going down the river, and then it just becomes like this crazy, I don't know, weird Goonies movie with Bomber comes out of keg or barrel, and his arms are sticking out, and his legs are sticking out, and he's spinning around and killing orcs. And yeah, I was just like, what's going on? I don't even know what's happening anymore. And then
that movie's almost like it's been different parts were made and then pieced together or something. A lot of times,
it's very strange. I mean, I know what he's doing. Like even in the Goblin, when they're doing they run on the bridge and the bridge goes down and another bridge comes up and they run into like some kind of weird roller coaster ride to get out of the Goblin Kingdom. That was odd. And then at the end in the Battle of Five Armies, when the worms from Arrakis showed up and started giving spice to everybody, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I was just these giant worms exploding out of the mountains, attacking thing. I was just, and I gotta say, and I'm gonna say this, and this goes for like 90% of the fantasy movies out there, except Kingdom of Heaven, fantasy medieval movies. Those stones that they hurl that knock down entire walls, those stones would have to be, I don't know, I'm not very good with weight, but they would have to be ginormous. And there's no machines big enough to hurl them, even on the backs of giants or trolls or whatever the hell they were doing. A trebuchet shoots a very small ball of stone. It just has a huge amount of power behind it, but it's still not going to knock through an 18-foot wall. It's going to clip it, and you're going to do that day after day after day until a weak spot's discovered. They need to quit doing that. They need to quit having explosions in medieval movies. Things didn't blow up in the Middle Ages. they didn't have gunpowder, so it just didn't happen.
I wanted to ask you, did you watch that movie yet? I told you to watch about him.
Which one?
The one about Tolkien.
I hadn't watched that.
You need to watch him. Tell me.
I hear it's a fantastic movie.
Oh, it's perfect for you. You'll love it.
Yeah, and I like it's kind of like a documentary, right?
No.
It's like the story of his love affair with his wife or something.
It's just the story of how he came to be and how it all came to be. But it's really interesting how he focused on language.
Oh yeah, now that I knew that he did without a doubt.
Yeah, that's why I knew you'd like it.
You know, he was a professor of linguistics, and he started creating his own language that kind of leads into that. It's very, very fascinating. And as you know, I've talked about on these streams before. My historical approach involves language in a huge way. Since there's a severe shortage of fantasy adventure films out there, I find some enjoyment in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies. I enjoyed Lord of the Rings movies, and like Geek Preacher said, if I watch The Hobbit and not think of it as The Hobbit, it's a fun movie. I enjoy it. It's pretty cool. I just wish that I wish the rocks would quit knocking down towers. But explosions are cool. There's a reason why Fireball is the definitive spell. Yeah, there you go. What movie is this? Did you post a movie there? Yeah, damn it, I got sidetracked on The Hobbit. At least The Hobbit didn't have an over-the-top Jeremy Irons with a thief. Oh, my God.
I know, man.
Damn it, Decimus. David said that. Isn't that... Is that the movie with the D&D movie with the villain that had a breathing problems because his lips were blue all the time? I could never understand why that wizard's lips were blue and who in their right mind thought it looked cool. I mean, oh man, that D&D movie, that first D&D movie, I am not a fan of that movie.
And everybody was waiting for it. Yes, and then we watched it with horror on the screens.
Yeah, I was just not a fan of that movie. The oatmeal scene, when he's running, he falls in the pit trap, and it's clearly just oatmeal, and it was just so. It was just not a good movie. I see. Yes, that is what I mean there. Entertaining fantasy. Yes, there you go, Murdo. Just have fun. David. Good Lord of mercy.
Every time I hear about them wanting to do a new one, I just cringe. I'm like, just don't even open that box,
I don't know why they have to do that comedic element in fantasy movies. It's as if the producers don't comprehend that you can this is a serious medium, and you can actually have real stories in it. You can read any. Now, obviously, The Hobbit is a little bit different. It's not that much different. But The Lord of the Rings, there's no comedic elements to The Lord of the Rings. There's nothing that you're reading The Lord of the Rings and guffawing out loud. No. Because it's a serious, epic tale. And you go into Silmarillion, it's even worse. So, and then there's countless, the Moorcock books, the Elric stuff. This stuff isn't comedic. I don't know why they feel like movies need this comedic element to it. It's one reason I think I enjoyed the Punisher series on Netflix so much. There's no comedy in that. If you haven't watched it, go watch it.
No, there's nothing funny about that.
There's nothing funny anywhere in it.
Unless you're Psycho, then it might be hilarious.
Exactly. It is sheer brutality from one, whatever you want to call it, the Punisher, to everybody that he encounters, and that's the type of movie that you can make with a fantasy. Like Retro's pointing out, Army of Darkness. It's great as a comedy. Yes, absolutely. That is a comedy. Go for it. But you can actually make a fantasy movie that doesn't involve guffawing all of that goobly.
The problem with those guys is they've just not played enough Castles and Crusades. Let's just face it. That's the issue.
They need to play more Castles and Crusades.
They die a few times. They straighten up.
Right. And I think part of it is they always want to envision dwarves as this kind of Snow White type thing, and it's not the way dwarves, if you read the Silmarillion specifically, it's not the way dwarves were conceived by Tolkien. They are a grim-faced, battle-hardened, very inner-focused people. Anyways, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on about it. I'm a gigantic fan of Tolkien. I'm a huge Silmarillion fan, so...
He's also prefers dwarves for his characters. I'll just add that in.
I do. I'm absolutely. That scene in the Silmarillion, if you haven't read it, I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. There's a scene where all of the elves and all of the humans and an army of dwarves from, I can't remember where it is, are actually attacking Morgoth and his armies. And the dragon comes out and fights the dwarves, and the dwarves, everyone is terrified of the dwarves. Even the dragons flee from the dwarves because they have these faces of iron until their king is slain. And when their king is slain, the dwarves pick him up and they walk off the battlefield and no one stops them. It's this fantastic epic scene of just, I don't know, it's an adrenaline pumping scene. Go read it. It's in the Silmarillion. I think it's in the final battle between Morgoth and the Knuckleheads, but it's just good stuff. They feel they need they need a female lead when there is no place. Yeah, they need to quit doing that too. If you've got a story that involves a female, do it. If it's a male, do it. It doesn't matter. Don't inject one into the other when it doesn't belong. Wait, people read the Silmarillion? I think I've read it like 4 or 5 times, and it's probably very soon on my to read again list. Why do you think there's been a switch to more comedy? I'm not even sure if it's something new, because if you watch those movies from the 80s, some of them are just looking atrocious. I mean, they're just atrocious, and I don't know if they're made to be that way intentionally, or if it's just cheap. They didn't have any money. I'm not sure. But Conan the Barbarian, the first one, doesn't have any comedy in it. That I remember. I guess there's a little bit with a wizard with his clickety-clacking, but the Destroyer, which I initially liked, but I've come to just loathe the movie because of the little thief running around, always making these squeaky jokes and shit. I don't want any of that crap. Conan needs to be cleaving skulls and all of that stuff. So I'm not sure if they've added comedy to it or if it's always been there. I think that amongst a vast majority of readers and viewers, producers, writers, there's this assumption that fantasy is kind of rooted and grounded in a childlike mentality is not the word, but venue, and it's just not. That's just not the case. I have been reading fantasy since God knows when, and there are some comedic fantasy books, but the vast majority of them are not comedic at all. From the Koldai books to the Moorcock books, Corum, for God's sake, there's nothing comedic in Corum. I mean, the list just goes on. So adding this comedic element to it is a failure to understand the property that they're dealing with, and probably has cost them gobs of money in the long run. You should try it. Commander's a great book. I'm still waiting on the Black Company by Glenn Cook. I'm rereading right now. Love it so much. Yes, a Black Company movie. If they could do it right, I'm so nervous about fantasy movies. There's a Dwarves book series that I felt really the Tolkien Dwarf stereotype. Well, yes, 42. I know what you're talking about. There's like 2 or 3 in the series. They're on my shelf out there. Came out in the late 80s, I think. Very good books. There's a charity going to buy his house in Oxford where he wrote books. Oh, that's very cool. There was a little bit of comedy in the 81 Excalibur, especially. Yeah, the whole like lightning scene, which is a little. I thought Merlin was a little disconcerting in that movie. I really enjoyed Excalibur, but I actually enjoyed Excalibur's kind of a fairy tale. I enjoyed the first part more than I did the latter part. Interesting. Or the dwarves from Belagost. That sounds familiar. That may be it. It's one of the kingdoms that's in the Blue Mountains, I believe, where Thorin eventually ends up living. I think. I say you should blame Piers Anthony and Terry Brady. Piers Anthony, I enjoyed Piers Anthony quite a bit. I'm so far off topic at this point, but
Well, basically, here, Steve, the chat has forced direction upon you.
yeah, it's taken me away. But Piers Anthony, I read a lot of Piers Anthony, but he's one of the most unique writers ever. Like if you take A Spell for Chameleon or on a Pale Horse, those books are classically brilliant. They're just brilliant. But when you get deeper into the series, it becomes unhinged. And by the time you're like third or fourth book into a series, you're like, what is going on? This isn't even interesting
At
anymore.
that point, you're trying to read his other stuff. You
Yeah.
know?
I
I
don't
know
know.
he's a good writer. I just got to read, and I like his other stuff, like the ones he did on the
Taros.
avatars or whatever, Death and all them. That was great. And then the space stuff.
Yeah.
Man, of a space time. Oh my gosh, man, that's.
And that first
That's good
book in that
stuff.
series is fantastic. And Piers Anthony is a very interesting writer.
Yeah, he is.
You do not need to keep the last part where the little thief runs up and stabs the beast after Conan killed it, and the triumphant music starts over again. That scene. There you go. That reminds me of Dragon Slayer when the king comes in and puts the blade into the dragon at the end. The Darkness Rising series is more accurate for D&D than any of the D&D movies. It sadly is. I got Darkness Rising poster signed by all that crew on the wall here. If you look in the first of their movies, I think it's about a third of the way through, you'll see some Troll Lord Games books in the shot in the retail store. The two of them are talking, and you'll see the Canting Crew and the World Builder in the shot.
Oh,
Yeah, we gave them all of that. And we gave all the crew a whole bunch of stuff. It was a lot of fun. Not a lot of funny about Thomas Covenant. Yeah, there's another one. There's no comedy in that one. The White Gold. I mean, it's good
oh
stuff.
man, that's such a good one too. I need to reread that, man.
And the Bellariant. I mean, there's so many series out there. There's serious good books that you could make movies out of that you don't have to have funny shit floating around.
Good point.
There's so much fantasy work material that can be made into awesome movies. I literally just said that's great. Murtaugh. I've got M. Heard here as Murtaugh in my head from so I've already kind of transferred. But they would feel they have to add their own crit, and that's it. They start adding crap to it. Honestly, the humor I've loved the most in my fantasy was Fritz Lieber. That mixed humor and fantasy in a way, and that's different. Yeah, because he's going at it. It's like Army of Darkness. He's going at it from that direction.
Have you ever read that series? It's about the swords. You know what I'm talking about?
Sword of Shannara. No, the
No,
Nine
no,
Swords.
that's good.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know, like they had the sword, sort of the Vulcan
Yes.
sword, and
Yes,
I can't remember the name of the series, but man, they were so good. They had all those different swords in there, and it was really good stuff
I've got
too.
those on the book in there. Thomas Covenant was a depression fest.
Yeah, he was.
It-
I feel like not giving away my books now. I told the wife I was going to give them all away, the paperbacks, but now I'm kind of thinking I need to dig through it first.
yeah, there's a lot of good, and it's hard to find those things in hardcover. It really is, because they only came out in very limited editions. But my feeling about Lord of the Rings actually echoed Gary's feelings, which surprised me when I found out what he thought about it. Well, you're going to have to hit us with that, Geek Preacher. The Sword of Shannara made me just so mad when I read it. It just did an obvious ripoff. It was a lot. It was a lot there. It was okay. It was decent. Gandalf was a druid instead of a wizard, so that's kind of interesting. The Book of Swords. That's what he's talking about, Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some good ones.
Those are very good books. Yeah, I read all this stuff in the 80s and 90s. I just poured over fantasy books like a madman. I'd love to see Vance's Linus trilogy made into a movie TV series. Who's the Ursula Le Guin? What did she write? The Earthsea stuff. That's actually a TV
Yeah, they did a miniseries on that, which was okay, but those books were great.
Yeah, good stuff. Book of Swords by Fred Seberhagen. Yep, there you go.
Yeah, that is. I need to look those up. Those were. I had that whole series. They were
Oh,
great.
yeah. It was good stuff. All right, so back to the. I'm gonna railroad 4 tricks of the trade in the next 10 minutes into this thing. So the second one we started to dive into forced direction, and essentially, well, now I got to read Geek Preacher's thing. I found the Ring trilogy well tedious. The action dragged, and it smacked of an allegory of the struggle of the little. Wait, too many comments, too fast. And now Grammarly's trying to correct it. England against the threat of Hitler's Nazi evil. At the risk of incurring the wrath of the professor's dedicated readers, I must say that I was so bored of his tomes that I took nearly three weeks to finish them. Yeah, I'm not that way with Lord of the Rings. I am a gigantic fan. When I read anything, I never look for a greater metaphor or allegory or any of that shit. I'm just reading the story. I'm lost in it. And Tolkien's descriptive text and his characterization and the sheer depth of history that flows on almost every page without actually, giving you the history is astounding. You can just looking at the sword that Aragorn, when they just talk about it in a paragraph or two, you suddenly see all of these kingdoms that came before. And it's just, Tolkien for me is just, he's the creme de la creme. Davis is a Howard fan. He puts Howard at the top. I put Tolkien at the top. So there you go. The book's awesome. The character is a mess. Yeah, the problem with the fantasy of the movies is all Hollywood, not the genre. Yeah, it's damn right there. I love Catherine Carey's Devery series. Those are good. Berserker series by Sepper Hagen as well. I haven't read that. I may have to track that down. Gary Gygax loved his pulp, but I feel the same way. We're both barbarians. Yeah, there you go, Geek Preacher. He's Geek Preachers with Davis. Yeah, Davis is. I love Howard, but Tolkien is my guy. All right, so forced direction. Essentially, forced direction is where you are making them go a certain way. I think the example I use is something like the characters land on a beach. There's one path off the beach, and this path leads up a mountain into a cave. Inside the cave is a dragon. There you are. And the characters really aren't getting to choose the adventure that they're on, getting to choose the path that they take, the direction that they take, or how they're going to approach this, whatever, the encounter, whatever you've kind of painted for them. And that's forced direction. You're really just forcing them to do something. And that's what most people consider railroading. It's something I try to avoid. I try to get out of that. I try never to kind of push them in that direction. It's better just to give them choices. So following the same example, and they land on the beach, and there's 3 or 4 paths to lead. They can climb the cliff over here. They can follow up the defile here. There's a creek coming out here that they might be able to, go up in a waterfall and go in this direction. There's a series of caves that lead to a path over here. And the thing to do as a game master is all of these paths should lead to the same place one way or the other. Just allow them to choose which direction they're going. And that way they feel as if they're actually doing something. They're actually in charge of their characters and going forward and choosing their own path, for the lack of a better word. That's always better than feeling like they don't have a choice. And so avoiding that type of forced direction is a good thing. Try to do that if you can. Sometimes you gotta force them, but like I said earlier, the fewer times you do it, the more your players will accept you doing it. So just try not to do it much. Give them multiple directions to choose from, multiple choices to choose from. Paul Anderson, that's another good one. Yeah, they're still talking about. We got to start a new stream that's just fiction and movies. We
for about 3 hours.
We could just go on every week. Silmarillion, Breaking of the Leaguer of Gondolin. Oh yeah, it's a great part of the book. Fantastic part of the book. I just love the Silmarillion, every bit of it. Okay, on Disney messing something up, The Black Cauldron made me mad because I loved Terran Wanderer by Lord Alexander. Disney made it too funny. I don't think I've ever seen The Black Cauldron. I watched a commercial for it a year or so ago, but I'm not sure I ever watched that. My Lark character of 20 Years of Never and Swift Arrow, I wrote it into my backstory that he was renamed when a large incident happened in his past, so he took no one as a name. Only one of the person in my LARP group understood their reference. No one, that's a movie, right? What is that off of? Bifford, I'm not getting your reference. No, it's Trinity is his name, is that I'm thinking of. And they only did book 2, Gondolin. I actually just read the Lion Thieves trilogy by Jack Vance. I've only read one Jack Vance book. I need to, because Gary was a huge Jack Vance fan. Don't watch it. What is he talking about? The Shannara or the Earthsea? I don't think I've seen the Black. It's an animated Disney, right? I'm pretty sure that's an animated Disney. That is a cartoon that helped started it all for me. I have to check it out. I know I watched bits and pieces of it. Yeah, you may be. I do like serious Geek Preacher. I like stuff that's grim, hard-hitting, serious. I like my comedy. I like to go watch Airplane or whatever. I'm happy with that. I love my Letterkenny, Trailer Park Boys, all of that. But but I'm in the mindset for that. Speaking of which, if you haven't watched Letterkenny, I strongly recommend it. It's a very good show on Hulu, Netflix. I don't know where it is.
Which one? Trailer Park Boys?
Letterkenny.
Oh.
It's a very good Canadian show. It's very cool. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's low key, but it's right up my alley. So the railroad switch is my next one. So this is a way to this is a trick of the trade to avoid railroading when you feel like you're railroading them too much or you're controlling the direction of play too much. Go ahead and give them choices. Allow them to go in any direction that they want to go. Just open it up and give the choice back to them. But take your encounter, whatever it is, whether it's a small dungeon, a village, a town, treasure, whatever it is, and just move it. Just move it in front of them. Drop it in front of them wherever they're going. I have done this innumerable times. I don't want to steer them. I want them to go into the forest. They end up in the plains. I pick up that dungeon and I drop it in the plains, and there you go. And then they're going to stumble upon it one way or the other. There's very few instances where you as a GM can't do that. I mean, it's not hard to do. There's going to be times, of course, that you've got something so tied to the terrain or so tied to a personage that moving it's going to wreck too much. And so at that point, you kind of either have to railroad them or abandon it. But just pick up whatever it is that you're doing and drop it in front of them. Did I skip one?
No.
I think I ran force direction and railroad switch, and I ran. The railroad switch was when you give them multiple choices to go to the one was to. I
don't bother to read that crap. I just put the
I wrote this quite a while ago. So and then we got it all together, and then I lost power or something. I lost something.
Yeah, something like that.
And so this one's just removed from my head. But yeah, so the force direction, that is where you a way to get around. See, now I'm all no. The railroad switch is a way to get around force direction, and go to panel number 4 there, and conducting. This is where you move your encounter. You move whatever it is in front of them. Man, I just want to talk about Tolkien, but it's a crazy game. Like, there's so many comments, I can't keep up with them. You need to read the Lineage trilogy, blah, blah, blah. I've been doing this for years, and it's the only way to maintain sanity. I don't care which way they go. They all lead the same place. Yeah. Omzad knows the story. It doesn't matter. Just let them do it. You'll be much happier in the end, as opposed to pushing them. And they'll be happier too, because they're not going to have any idea that you've moved whatever you've done. As for humor, I like it when humor offsets the seriousness of the situation in a very human way. Much like in real life, I use humor to help me process pain. Very few authors can do this well. Very few can do it well, and it usually comes off as campy. And in the movies, it usually comes off as just poorly done. I mean, I'm sure if I thought about it, I could find some instances, but it's rare. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger throws in humorous comments in almost every movie he does, but his movie's kind of campy. So his "I'll be back" or whatever kind of fits. What is this? My favorite one is when he in Commando, when he hurls the pipe and sticks Bennett to a steam thing, and steam is blowing through Bennett's chest, and he goes, "Let off some steam, Bennett," or whatever. So that, the whole movie's kind of campy, so you can go campy. But fusing humor with serious content, and The Hobbit's a good example, is The Lord of the Rings is a good example, is a difficult. Conan is a good example. Putting humor in a Conan story, I would see no reason for humor in a Conan story if Howard hadn't fused it in there, and I can't think of, like in Red Nails, I don't think there's any humor in it. I don't remember any humor being in the Elric sagas either, certainly not Corum. So it's rare. It's a very difficult thing to do, and when you do it, you just got to be careful. It is called The Chronicles of Predian. I'll have to check that out. I'm going to do my part to educate our youth properly whenever I sub in elementary school, and we have a movie time. I show Labyrinth, Black Cauldron, and Sword in the Stone. Very cool. There you go.
That pic I've got there for the scene is an actual live capture of me in my younger days when I was dungeon mastering.
Is that what it is? Is that what
Yeah,
that is?
yeah.
You conducting that? Yeah.
That's right.
Your beard was very noble. It was, it was quite a
Yes.
beard.
I traded all that off though now. Those trappings do not apply to me anymore.
How's it going, however? We have wandered far, far afield from our GM tricks of the trade, and my brain is all addled. So there you go. Baba Boomski. I feel like Howard did fuse a little humor in his Solomon Kane books when he went to Africa, but that wouldn't be too welcome in today's world. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. That'll pass. We'll full circle and all that. But yeah, I mean that's the thing about a lot of this stuff is it's hard to do. It's hard to fuse the two. It's hard to fuse humor into a role-playing game that doesn't immediately become kind of real-world humor. So you're either going to go down one track or you're going to go down the other. Making the two work together is very difficult. You have to have someone that's very skilled to do it. You know, I don't know that maybe the Harry Potter movie or books fall into this, books and movies. Thoroughly enjoyed the books, thoroughly enjoyed the movies. And there is humor in that, and there's tragedy in that, and there's a bigger story in it. So maybe the Harry Potter books are a good example of that. Game of Thrones, I think, does not. It does not. And we do our best to derail you as a perfect example of the topic. Yeah, and I came in this one swinging. I'm not going to get derailed today. I lost that fight and then some. When Arnold is holding the little weasel guy over the cliff and he's wanting him, you said you wouldn't kill me. I lied, and drops him. Yeah, that's a perfect example. That's Commando. If you haven't watched the movie, go watch it. It's got an insane kill count on it. I think it's like 190 people.
Oh, it's outrageous.
Oh, it's just crazy. When he gets in that barracks or whatever, it's just great. It's just fun. I watched that in theater. I rarely miss an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I did not watch the one where he gave birth to a child, but beyond that, it is rare. There's almost every movie he's done I have enjoyed, even the latter ones. He plays a sheriff in some town. What is that called? In Texas. Really, it's got the jackass guy in it. It's a really good movie. Very, very good movie. Paranoia is the only RPG I know that can pull off humor well. Paranoia is something. Yeah, it's a very special game. David and Commander, you guys are right. It is a very unique game, one of a kind. For gaming, best of humor isn't hard coded into the writing, but rather happens extemporaneously by the DM of the player. Absolutely, that's the thing. You really. I can't think of any of the adventures that we've written that have humor in them. Certainly not Davis's. Maybe Mac's Fantastic Adventure. Maybe. But probably not. No. Is it Raw Deal? Raw Deal? Not sure it might be. It came out like 5-6 years ago. 8, 9, 10 years ago. No, it's not Raw Deal. This one's a...
Gamer World's good for everything, Derek.
The Last Stand. The Last Stand. I'll get the link here. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It's just a fun, good action flick. There you go.
I'll have to check it out. I've not seen that, I don't think.
But hey, yeah, it is really good. Well, it's an Arnold movie, so it's not, it's Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I have not seen that movie.
But it's a lot of fun, and the Jackass character is really cool. I went Scooby-Doo Cthulhu. We just use humor, so there you go.
Yeah, if you're going to watch anything Arnold, you can't take any of it serious. I mean,
no, you got to have. It's fun. It's fun, and the action is going to be there, and there's going to be some brutal fights in it. It's just a good, fun movie. Watch it thoroughly. You'll enjoy it. How could I forget The Last Stand? Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. He did another one where he's playing this cop, and he's kind of a robber or something. I can't remember. There's about 3 that he came out with a few years ago, right after he became governor, or right before he became governor. I can't remember now. And they're all actually very good films. I'm a huge Arnie fan. All right, so actually I want to let's move to number 5, because Mark's right. I actually don't want to miss this one. This is crazy important.
I just told him it was Slave for 20 after.
Do what?
I told him it was Slave for 20 more minutes from now.
There you go.
How you like that?
Move me to panel 5, avoid their train. So this one is actually very important.
I did. Just pay attention to the serious cartoon I put in there first, and then you'll be set.
I see it's from the AD&D Players Handbook. Me and the boys are getting ready to derail. Yep, there it is. And that's the thing. So we always talk about the GM railroading the players. And that is definitely a huge part of the game. GMs do it all the time. They probably shouldn't. They should probably mitigate it, like we've talked about in like 3 minutes of this entire hour-long discussion on railroading. But do not let the players railroad you as a GM. This happens far more often than people realize. Players, especially experienced players and younger GMs, or not younger, but you know what I mean, inexperienced, the players will say things. Well, maybe does it really happen that way? Is that the way? What's his armor class? I think the spell effect would be, all this litany of things that players will say to GMs, that make them doubt what they're doing and maybe change what they're doing and redirect their game. And you don't realize it, but you're being railroaded. And don't let them railroad you. Just absolutely don't let them. If they do pull a rule on you and they try to correct you, it's really easy to get around. It normally works that way, but in this instance, that type of thing. You can very easily side or push a player aside, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of players know the DM is running the game. The GM's got, this is it, man. I'm just really into dungeon mastering today. I'm not forgetting the whole GM thing. I just keep saying DM over and over again. But the GM is running the game, and they're gonna give way, especially if they're experienced. They're gonna give way most of the times, but definitely just don't let them railroad you, and don't let them pull rules on you. Don't let them do all of this stuff. Don't let them put suggestions in your mind. Now, if you've got a legitimate question on how something works or how something, I do this all the time, I'll stop in the middle of a session and say, okay, what are the physics of this? How does this actually do? Because there's a couple of people at my table who are versed in that, area, and I'm not. I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination. So you certainly can ask for advice and whatnot, but don't let them reroute your game in directions that they want it to go, or they think it should go, or they feel like it should go. And they'll do it most subtly. And they do it post-game criticisms as well. Well, when you were doing this, I was very confused. And that's another way that players will try to railroad you, is they'll be confused all the time. I didn't understand that. So there's this blah, blah, blah. Well, you should have listened more. Or if you didn't understand, say, I don't understand. Can you explain that again? This is one of the few times you'll see me as a GM kind of preach that the GM's got to take a hard stand and not get pushed one way or the other. Because in a while, players will get, if you allow it, players will start not really taking advantage intentionally, but they'll begin to kind of move things through your game and say things at the table that they know are going to impact, or subconsciously know are going to impact. And you don't want that. It's your game to run, and you got to run it. So avoid their train. Stay on your own. They can figure their own stuff out. But like I said earlier, it does it normally, but this time it's a little different. That type of stuff. So yeah, definitely. Do not let them railroad you. All right, you have muted yourself.
My players have finally worn me down now to where I've agreed to give them experience. Yep, you heard it here. All my years.
You're going to acquiesce.
They've worn me down. I took one of the guys, I think it was Captain Kirk, had did a simplification of our experience tables.
Yeah.
And I found it on the forums a long time ago, and I've still got it. So I went through it and I made up a streamlined one so that they will assume they're getting experience that they've worked hard for, whereas I will just come with a flippant number of my own and hand it to them, so they can have the illusion.
Yeah, that sometimes is the best way to do it. Yeah, Gig Preacher, it is their job. Their job is to influence you, and it's your job to not be influenced. So that's the deal. Yeah, there you go. That's
interesting what Derek said there.
Read the rule book. Watch your clearance level again. Sorry, Steve. Yeah, Piper. We're I don't know what we're talking about. Movies or railroading, one or the other. So, Ultraviolet. That was a good movie, actually. Well done. Made it under the wire. Yes, we got it in, and it is now 5:00. Yeah, There's no telling, Piper. There's just no telling. The internet's just insane. I wish I'd brought this earlier. How to keep one player from railroading other players? Oh, that's a great addendum to this. We'll have to bring that up next time. That may be something. That may be a whole trick of the trade by itself, because that is an issue where players start moving other players in certain directions that they don't particularly want to go. My players always want to loot things, which is reasonable, but I never know how often I should let them find things. Yeah, the whole looting thing is always, for me, I don't know. What's the point of the adventure? Are you just killing people and taking their stuff? I think that's larceny. And
murder hobo.
Yes, murder hobo. That's all you're doing. So, but on the other side of the screens, of course, the players want treasure so they can buy shit, and whatever. So, I'm always torn on that. Hey Chuck, I'm not in your game, but can I get some XP from you as well? You just doling it out. It's good to go. Milestones better than XP. Very cool. Malkara. That's very interesting. Get to a certain area, gain a level, or however you do it. That's interesting. Thanks for another fun stream, Chuck and Steve. Yep, we're going to start winding her down, coming in late, but mods are railroading. Yeah, they tend to. But you can break that. I've used milestones for years, but I'm experimenting with the new. Oh, that's Chuck. I far prefer XP. It enables players to earn more XP through clever play as opposed to arbitrary milestone events. There's no reason you can't weave the two together, though. I'm with you on that. Like all preachers, it takes a while, but I eventually make a decent point. You make plenty of good points, my friend. I frequently watch your Sunday sermons. I'm new to DMing at 5e, only ran 3 or 4 sessions so far. Yeah, I've actually not run 5e yet. I went from AD&D to Castles and Crusades, so I'm very unfamiliar with 5th edition. The tried and true process of adventure success. All right, everybody, we are going to thank you. Great. Thank Virtual for showing up. I'm not showing which way you should go, but the next milestone is to the east, and you all need to leave now before Steve finishes talking. Yeah, I got to wrap it up. What? Chuck's got his finger up. Do we have an announcement? Nothing? We're good?
Yeah,
Next.
there is one small announcement. I believe, if I'm not misquoting him, let me check the calendar here. Next Wednesday night, well, I don't know if we'll be live then, but we're going to have a new stream starting with Samuel. DM Samuel, you in the chat? He's starting up a new stream on our channel. He's going to be running a show where it's going to be about 3 hours long, and about 75% to 80% of the show will be being played. He's going to be using a really stripped down VTT called Owlbear Radio. I think it's what it's called. Rodeo. Owl Rodeo is what it is, I think. Anyway, the point is, he's going to be doing that, and then at the end of the session, for probably about a half an hour, they're going to do sort of a video podcast where they talk about the adventure and the rules of CNC and the world of Aird and kind of break all that down. So it's going to be a little different. It's going to be cool.
So that'll be next
That's going
Wednesday?
to be on Wednesdays.
What time?
It's going to start at, well, let me look real quick.
We'll get a schedule up.
He's looking for players.
We'll get a schedule up. So I'll be back next week at, so Retro says it's at 7 Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be back next week for Ask Me Anything at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, GM Tricks of the Trade on Thursday, and we've got DM Samuel running 7 o'clock Wednesday Eastern Standard Time.
Maybe he'll be live. Now, Daniel's moving his show to Thursday nights.
Okay, and
we'll have Haunted Holler painting at 8 p.m. Central, 7 or 8 p.m. Central. I have to figure that out yet.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
We're going to get a movie show in here. We're going to get it up next week. I don't know when, but we're going to do it next week. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Sure appreciate everybody jumping in, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you guys.
Mikey just got the railroading emails. Sorry, Mikey.
Really email.
We'll see you later.
Oh, mercy. See you guys.
Take care. All right, you logging me out? I don't know.
Yeah, you can leave now.
Troll Lord Games. Join the fray.